My name is Joanna Lemley, and I'm a wetland ecologist with the Colorado Natural Heritage Program. The following presentation will cover the site evaluation process outlined in the Field Protocol for Lentic, Riparian, and Wetland Systems, the official protocol of the BLM Lentic AIM program. You can follow along in Section 3 of the draft protocol, starting on page 24. Site evaluation is a critical process for all monitoring projects. Once a sampling approach and the specific coordinates associated with sample locations have been selected, each location must be evaluated to ensure it fits within the target population of the monitoring project. In general, the target population will be the applicable riparian and wetland ecosystems defined in Section 1.2 of the protocol. However, some monitoring projects may refine the target population further, for example, by wetland type, by management priority, such as sage-grouse habitat, or by specific zones of interest within larger wetland or riparian complexes. Each potential sample location should be evaluated through a two-step process of office evaluation followed by field verification. The site evaluation process is particularly important for random designs that will be used to estimate the range of condition across a population of interest. There is more flexibility in evaluating targeted sites, which are selected for specific management objectives. To reiterate concepts from a previous presentation, the Field Protocol for Lentic, Riparian, and Wetland Systems is intended for vegetated, riparian, and wetland areas, sometimes referred to as lentic areas. These include a variety of different habitats that are influenced by surface and groundwater. More specifically, to be sampleable with the protocol, a site must have at least 10% canopy cover of perennial vegetation, a dominance of hydrophytic vegetation, those rated obligate, FAC-wet, or FAC in the National Wetland Plant Species List, hydrology dominated by lentic surface or groundwater, meaning slow-moving or still water beyond the immediate banks of a river or stream channel, no more than 10% cover of water deeper than 50 centimeters during the growing season, and sufficient area to accommodate 75 meters of total transect length based on 3 25-meter transects spaced at least 5 meters apart. The most important criterion to keep in mind when evaluating potential sample locations is the vegetation community. Sites must be dominated by hydrophytic species based on the National Wetland Plant List. Equally important, sites must be dominated by lentic surface or groundwater, meaning water that is slow-moving and not within the channel or immediate banks of a river or stream. Vegetation on the floodplains of rivers and streams can be included if the water slows and pools when the river floods. Site evaluation is a two-step process. The first step takes place in the office. This step should be conducted before the start of the field season to maximize efficiency. Anyone involved in the project can conduct office evaluation, including BLM resource specialists, contracted crew managers, or crew leads. The purpose of office evaluation is to determine whether the sample location or surrounding area is likely to meet the definition of the target population. The second objective is to verify that the sample location is accessible, and if so, to plan a travel route. And third, to develop a preliminary plan for laying out the monitoring plot. When conducting office evaluation, all area within 50 meters of the specific sample location should be evaluated. Monitoring plots can be shifted up to 50 meters away from the sample location to be fully within riparian and wetland habitat. Office evaluation can include, but it is not limited to, reviewing aerial imagery, topographic maps, riparian and wetland mapping, and other ancillary data sources, compiling previously collected monitoring or assessment data, consulting with field office resource specialists for local knowledge, and contacting private landowners to obtain permission and instructions. For 2021, this process is being conducted in the Site Evaluation web map in ArcGIS Online. Crew leads and crew managers from each of the 7 field teams have been conducting office evaluation throughout the late spring in preparation for the summer field season. Office evaluation can be used to determine whether a sample location is a member of the target population and if it is accessible. These determinations should always be based on at least 2 lines of evidence, meaning aerial imagery and local knowledge, or aerial imagery followed by a scouting visit. Any sample location that is rejected during office evaluation needs to be assigned a category and a reason listed in Table 5. Reasons that a site would be considered permanently inaccessible include that access was denied to private land that would need to be crossed to reach the sample location on BLM land, that terrain such as cliffs, steep slopes, waterfalls, or permanently deep water prevent access to the sample location, or third, that the distance to reach the sample location from a road or UTV path is greater than 5 kilometers. Reasons that a site would be considered non-target include upland vegetation at and within 50 meters of the sample location, a lack of perennial vegetation, a riparian or wetland area that does not accommodate 3 25-meter transects, permanent deep water at and surrounding the sample location, riparian vegetation that is only lotic in character, meaning a thin band of vegetation on the immediate banks of a river or stream, land administered by the wrong agency, and for the time being, wetlands influenced by tidal waters. We have not yet tested the protocols in tidally influenced systems. It is critical that the correct reason is attributed to every rejected sample location to inform the sample design estimates. Below are examples of office rejections, including a small pond with no perennial vegetation along the margins, a sample location that fell in a deep water lake, and a gully with no hydrophytic vegetation. Every sample location that passes the office evaluation screening must be visited in the field, either during a scouting visit or immediately before sampling. To carry out a field evaluation, navigate as close to the sample location as possible and determine if the area at and surrounding the sample location meets all the criteria for the target population. This slide shows sites that could be evaluated as non-target in the field. The lower right shows a lotic system without a true lentic component. The upper left shows a drainage dominated by upland vegetation and without a dominance of hydrophytic vegetation. The center photo shows a mudflat with less than 10% cover of perennial vegetation. Figure 4 on page 29 of the protocol is a flowchart for the field evaluation process. The Location Verification Survey 123 form also assists with field evaluation. Both will guide you through the considerations needed to determine if a site is sampleable. In some cases, the obstacles, hazards, or deep water are only temporary, and sampling may be possible at a later time. In those cases, the sample location would be classified as reattempt needed, and details should be recorded to assist with future attempts. Any sample location visited in the field must also be assigned with one of 4 possible outcomes. Either the site was sampled, a reattempt is needed, the site is permanently inaccessible, or the site is non-target. Any sample location that is not sampled, either because a reattempt is needed or because it is permanently inaccessible or non-target, must be assigned a specific reason from Table 5. Those reasons are the same permanently inaccessible and non-target reasons that we listed for office evaluation, and also include a set of reasons for reattempt needed, including a different route or permission is needed, that there is temporary deep water, that the visit was only for recon purposes and will be visited again for sampling later in the season. Seasonality is a reason for reattempt needed, meaning that the sample location was visited either before the vegetation is ready for sampling, or in some cases, too late in the season, and very little is still identifiable. Recent disturbance means that a very recent flood or fire has come through the area, but the site could be sampleable at another time. And then an other bucket, meaning that inclement weather or other considerations turn the crew back without being able to sample. It is important to note that difficulty in sampling a site, such as dense woody vegetation, shown here in these two photos, is not a reason to reject a sample location. Any site that is accessible should be sampled. Lastly, there are several considerations to keep in mind for targeted sites, depending on management objectives. One important consideration is whether or not to sample upland vegetation in historical wet areas. Many riparian and wetland areas across the West have dried or contracted due to channelization, soil disruption, or declining groundwater levels. These are important opportunities for restoration. If the management objective includes documenting decline in the riparian or wetland area or expansion of hydrophytic vegetation due to impacts or restoration, the transects can be placed beyond the current edge of the target population and into the upland. This will allow change over time to be monitored. The site shown here is a restoration project in Idaho, where over time, installed beaver dam analogs have expanded the riparian and wetland vegetation. In this case, stretching monitoring transects into the upland allows that change to be captured. Another consideration is the proximity of fencing. If a sample location falls near an exclosure or other fencing, it is best to sample either within or outside of the fence. Management objectives may even require sampling a pair of plots, one inside and one without, to measure the difference. Monitoring objectives may target a specific zone of interest within a larger wetland or riparian area that is sensitive to disturbance. In those cases, work closely with your BLM resource contacts to understand the specific zone that is being monitored. That concludes this presentation outlining the site evaluation process within the Lent a Game program. Thank you for listening.